Welcome back to Big Sky Buckets. I'm Big Sky, and today we're going to do a recap episode, video, whatever you want to call it, about All-Star Weekend. I know I'm a little bit late, but some things got in the way. We're going to talk about there was a player extension, there was a coach fired yesterday, and then we're kind of going to talk about what to look forward to in the second half of the slog of the season. The All-Star break is typically the break that is much needed for NBA, specifically players, teams, and just fans overall, because this is part of where the attention dies down. Certain teams start to cement themselves, like the Celtics are going to be the number one seed in the East, in my opinion. They kind of have just cemented themselves at this point. So it's really about which teams to look at in terms of where the entertainment might actually come into play, because there's still teams trying to figure out, are they going to make the play-in? Are they going to make the playoffs? All of that. But yeah, before we begin, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I'd appreciate all the support and subscriptions as I get this thing up and going. Like the video, comment down below what your thoughts are. And if you're an audio-only listener, give it a rate, give it a listen. Let's get into it. So All-Star Weekend was this past weekend, and there's a lot of conversation about, does this thing work anymore? Because I think in the past couple of years, we've noticed that there's been some drop-offs. All-Star Game, the dunk contest has really fallen off a cliff as of the past like 3-4 years, honestly. And then what things work. And in my opinion, from this past weekend, the two things that really stand out to me is the Rising Stars game. The new, I think it was implemented maybe last year, maybe the year before that. The implementation of doing a draft for the Rising Stars games instead of doing USA versus international, having it be 4 teams, having it actually be competitive, and even implementing the G League guys, which is kind of where I want to go with this. Now, the G League team actually did beat Team PAL in the first round, where a lot of these G League guys, in terms of the media, have been getting slammed because the G League Ignite guys are not really winning many games. And this was a good showcase of what I have been talking about in terms of this draft is kind of being overhated a little bit in my mind. I saw something that's like, it's comparable to the 2013 draft, which that's very critical. I don't necessarily see that. I'm not gonna sit here and stand on this hill saying that this is a better draft. Like, this is one of the best drafts in a while, but I do think it's being overhated, and the G Leaguers winning even one round against genuine NBA talent in terms of like Victor Wembanyama was on that team and a couple of others. Like, that's a good showcase, and that's kind of what you want to see, of just like, oh my god, there was actually an upset here. But the other one was the 3-point contest, and then, as many people have already talked about, Sabrina versus Steph. Those two, like the 3-point contest, Sabrina versus Steph, and the Rising Stars game, was the only thing that I think really stood out about All-Star Weekend. Everything else was, I have never really cared at all about the celebrity game. If you enjoy that, good for you. It's just not my cup of tea, honestly. And in terms of slam dunk contest, everyone kind of knew it was going to be Buns. It's just kind of, we've hit a road where stars don't really want to play. They don't want to do the slam dunk contest anymore. Look, it's just kind of, it feels like a relic of the past at this point, because it's just, no one wants to do it. Therefore, I don't really know how you fix it and this is kind of the running theme of All-Star Weekend. A lot of these things feel like relics of the past because there's not that inspiration to try. There's not that real motivation to go out there, and they'll put on a show, but they won't play the way that a lot of people are asking for, which brings us to the All-Star game. I don't really know how you fix this. Motivation should not just be dollars. There should be some sense of reputation, maybe some sense of pride that just isn't being played with. Because, and I understand where the players are coming from. They view this as a break. They view this weekend as a break. I don't know when the cutoff was from, we're going to be displaying our all-star level talent by really competing out there, to, it's a genuine break. I've really needed this. I'm not going to try. But that's kind of what happened. In my opinion, I don't really care if they try or not. I'm going to find entertainment in whatever they show me in the All-Star game. Like, I think Jokic and Luka not trying, a lot of people are going to be pissed about it. I thought it was genuinely hilarious because they're literally not trying, whereas in a regular game, they just look like monsters out on the court, just getting anything and everything they want. But I completely understand that this is not really a sustainable model for actually making money, actually getting people to pay all that money to get seats in hotels in the All-Star cities and watching these All-Star games. So I don't really know how you fix it. Adam Silver looks like he's pissed because he was trying to say it was going to be more competitive this year, and then they went on and broke the record for scoring in the All-Star games. So collectively here, there's a lot of problems that need fixing. I do think because of how the NBA is, how it's moved more towards three-point shooting, that's why the three-point shooting contest stands out. And then in terms of the Rising Stars game, just to rehash it, the reason it works is because they found a way to make it competitive. They found a way to really add a small tournament style, like breaking it into 4 teams, having it drafted, having a specific amount of points that you need to score to win. That makes it competitive. That makes it so that they know how much they need to get. They know when crunch time happens, all of that. When we were doing the thing when Kobe had passed, sadly, we implemented into the All-Star game the kind of, in the fourth quarter, you need this many points to win, 24. You just got to figure a way to implement that back in so that it can be more competitive again, but I don't really know how you fix this. So that's All-Star Weekend. There's a lot to be figured out within Adam Silver and the rest of the hierarchy of the NBA and how to fix it. That's their problem, not really ours. I don't really want to hear NBA players want to get paid more to try harder. That's kind of bullshit. But other than that, I mean, I'll say it was fun. It just may not be as entertaining as we once wanted it to be. But let's get to the real nitty gritty here. The reason I really want to come on here, like, everyone's given their all-star opinion. I just thought I'd make it quick on this one. But to me, some of the more interesting things. First of all, Mike Conley got an extension yesterday, $21 million over 2 years. This is good value. This is also very good value in terms of being a tradable asset. I think Minnesota fans may not want to hear this because as much as they like Mike Conley, I like him as well. As you get older and you're a shorter point guard and you've just been in the league for longer, he being starting level point guard in this league is probably going to diminish over the years just because this is how it goes. Not everyone can be LeBron and still put up like 25 plus at the age of 39. He's going to slowly but surely regress. He's still going to be a great playmaker, but he may not give you everything you need at the point guard position. It is one of the positions specifically for the Timberwolves that needs to be monitored over the coming years. So I think that is a very, very tradable contract for a starting level point guard for a team that is very good right now. But again, that's in the future. I'm not saying he needs to be traded now. I'm just saying the reason this contract exists is to be traded down the line, because as they start going into the second apron, you're going to realize they either will need to move off of big money, like either Rudy, Cat, they're not going to move off of Ant, obviously, or they start making marginal moves, I guess, is the way to put it, where you flip this a Mike Conley, who you don't necessarily want making that much money based on how much money is already being allocated to a bunch of different players on this team off the bench. So that's where I'm coming with that. And in terms of the Brooklyn Nets, they fired Jacque Vaughn yesterday as well. Now, there's not as much controversy in this one as there was in Adrian Griffin. I think they did inevitably make the right decision. And in terms of how long he should have had to be the coach, I think there's both a pro and a con here of what the front office did. First of all, I do think that Jacque Vaughn, he should have known he was on a short leash. When you are a team that doesn't have control over their draft capital for the foreseeable future, your one goal is you have to at least make the play-in. And sitting at the 11th seed right now, you were on the hot seat. It doesn't help that an article came out that said that he basically designed the offense for Ben Simmons, and he's only played like 12 games for the Nets. That's really, really bad because, in my opinion, I know being a coach is hard. I know I come on here and slam a lot of coaches, and I do want to give them their flowers. It's a very, very hard job. I find it very difficult to be able to defend Jacque Vaughn if he was unable to have a backup plan here. You knew Ben Simmons has a well documented injury history, even since he's basically gotten to the Brooklyn Nets. And there is no way to adapt the offensive scheme at all to the other players you have on this team. There's criticism that you can give this front office for sure in terms of wanting to build around Mikal Bridges, who, instead of being that all-star we all thought that he could be last year after the deadline, where he was averaging like 20-something points and he was looking incredible. He came down to earth this year. There is a lot to criticize overall in Brooklyn, but I think this was the right call. You have to try and find something that works come the back half of the season. If you're the Nets, you have to figure out if new interim head coach Kevin Ollie can turn this thing around a little bit, because you're only a couple games out of the 10th seed. You at least need to make it to the play-in game if you're Brooklyn for it to be a like semi-successful. Like, basically, you're just looking at the season as, can it not be a failure? And right now it's looking really bad, but you're not in the worst position, which is a great way to transition to what is there to look forward to in the NBA during the second half of the slog before the playoffs. These play-in teams, these teams on the cusp of being top 6 seeds, this is where the fun begins. Now, I have it's very well documented, my criticisms of Atlanta, but one thing that Trae Young has done year in, year out for the past 2 years is that somehow, some way, he will will this team from the play-in to the playoffs. He's done it every year. He has not lost a single play-in game. This is the fun, where we get to see the Warriors have been on a heater, so congrats to them. They did hit that rock bottom, like I said, but now they are starting to crawl up. They're in the play-in again. The Lakers being in the play-in. Teams that are rising right now, and then kind of just, instead of looking at the Celtics, instead of looking at the top 4 seeds, I would say top 3 seeds currently in the West. I have questions about the Nuggets right now, but there are a couple of teams here really that you want to lock into, because this is going to be a little bit more competitive than from someone like the Celtics, OKC, Minnesota, Clippers. I think they're all solidly going to be top 3 seeds at this point. The question I have for the 4th seed in the West, the Nuggets last year around this time, this is when they took their foot off the gas, and one of the things that was beneficial for them is that they were so far and away the number 1 seed that they had the ability to just start resting their guys a lot and prepare for the playoffs. They don't really have that luxury right now. Teams like the Phoenix Suns, the Dallas Mavericks, they're all making a push at the right time. They easily could jump the Nuggets if they take their foot off the gas. And the Nuggets kind of have to figure some stuff out, because they've been kind of flirting around with, okay, we won some games, we lose some games. They're a team to look at to see if they ramp things up instead of take their foot off the gas. Because in my opinion, the reason why they should be ramping it up instead of taking their foot off the gas, so I think they need to cement themselves as a top 4 seed in the West, because their home court advantage is just so important come the playoffs because of the altitude. There's not really a way around it. It's not black magic. It's just science that altitude really gets to other teams, and especially when home to away to home, those teams can't really get acclimated to the altitude the way that this team is already acclimated to it. And I think that makes a lot of difference. You want that home and then away and then home if for 5, 6, and 7 in terms of playoff series. So they really shouldn't take their foot off the gas, especially when Phoenix and the Mavericks are starting to heat up. There's obviously a couple other teams. Basically, the West is going to be entertaining, I think, from 4 down, to figure out where everyone slots in. The Pelicans and the Kings, in my opinion, are 2 teams to monitor as well, because I have no idea where they're going to fully slot in. I really do think that the Suns and Mavs are either going to be, whichever one, 5 and 6, and then the Pelicans, Kings, Lakers, and Golden State are going to cement the play-in for the West. In terms of the East, one thing to look forward to is the 2 through 4 slot, maybe even 2 through 5. The Bucks aren't doing super hot right now, but they can ramp it up. The Cavaliers at 2 is really interesting to see if the Knicks are able to jump them or just in general jump the Bucks. And then I think the Pacers are going to get hot. The main thing that's going to be kind of a non-factor here is I think that seeds 6 through 8 are probably solidly locked in my opinion. They can flip, but I don't necessarily think there's going to be as much competition with, they may not be there yet, but the 76ers will be in that running, the Miami Heat and the Orlando Magic. I think they'll slot in all there. I think the real interesting fact is where the Bucks are going to end up and where the Pacers are going to end up, because I think the top 3 is going to end up being Boston, and then somewhere between Cleveland and New York. And then I think at 4 you'll have the Bucks, and then I think at 5 you'll have the Pacers. But that'll be an interesting one. Just watch where those 2 teams end up, because if they're 4 and 5, we get the first round just grudge match, which is going to be awesome. And then in terms of 9 and 10, that's where to look at, because I think, like we talked about the Nets, I think they can slot in at 10 if the Hawks really suck. But that's the other thing for the Hawks, specifically just from my opinion. One thing to watch is that there's been a lot of conversation, at least as a fan, of like, okay, we've done all of these weird rotations or just like very specific rotations of guys that aren't really contributing to winning based on potential trade stock. Okay, well, trade deadline is over. Do we see Toby Buffkin start slotting in the lineup? Do we see Onyeka Okongwu really start now? Do we see any of these real changes that a lot of the fans are asking for? Or is it the same old, same old? Because if it's the same old of the rotations that have already been cemented, this is probably bad news overall for all Hawks fans. But that's what I have to say. I have no idea. That's kind of like those seeds. The 4 to 10 in the West, the 2 through 5, and then 9 through 11 seeds in the East. Those are the teams to watch for in the second half of the slog of the season, because eventually you just got to get to the second half of March, and that's when college basketball is going to take over. I'll do some March Madness stuff, some tourney stuff in general, but once March Madness is over, that's when we get back to, here we go, we're about to start the playoffs, and we get to have a little conversation about, we get to start talking about what are we thinking about playoff matchups, all of that. And yeah, thank you guys for listening. Next episode is going to be power rankings again. All right, as we get closer to the playoffs, more of that is going to be integrated into these rankings. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Sub, like, comment, all of that. And I will see you guys either Sunday, Monday, or next Tuesday. Peace.